the saga of Dr. Ruja Ignatova. She is currently the only woman on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list, and trust me, there is a very good reason for that. She orchestrated a staggering global financial fraud that completely shook the world. We're talking about a story of pure manipulation, extreme greed, and a web of lies so incredibly vast, it's honestly hard to wrap your head around.
$15 billion. Let that sink in for a second. That is the upper estimate of the billions of dollars lost by unsuspecting victims all over the globe. Ruja essentially built what became one of history's largest combined Ponzi schemes, pyramid schemes, and crypto scams, rolling all of those destructive financial traps into one colossal, unstoppable empire.
So the $5 million question, literally since there's an FBI reward out for her, is where on earth is the crypto queen? But, before we can even begin to answer how she vanished without a trace and left all that devastation behind, we really have to look at exactly how she built this massive machine of deception in the first place.
Section 1. Meet the Crypto Queen, the mastermind of OneCoin.
You see, Dr. Ruja wasn't your typical scammer. She had a PhD in law, an Oxford degree, and she used to be a consultant at the highly prestigious firm McKinsey. So when she stood on stage in these glamorous designer dresses, confidently calling herself the creator of the Bitcoin killer, people listened. She looked like a legitimate financial genius. And she brilliantly exploited the massive FOMO, that fear of missing out, during the early crypto boom. People were just desperate for the next big thing, and she gave them this shiny, highly profitable, easy-to-use alternative to Bitcoin.
Moving on to Section 2, Anatomy of the Scam, and the infamous OneCoin loophole. Now, to really understand how this spread like wildfire, you have to understand multi-level marketing, or MLM. In a nutshell, it's a business strategy where you earn commissions not just for selling products yourself, but also for the sales made by anyone you recruit into the network. The absolute game changer here is that Ruja wasn't just selling crypto. She teamed up with an MLM expert named Sebastian Greenwood. Together, they weaponized this structure to aggressively push her fake coin to non-tech-savvy investors all over the world. I mean, it was practically a match made in heaven for a scam.
But how did they dodge those early crypto regulations? Well, they used a genius, albeit highly illegal, three-step loophole. Because she didn't actually have a product, people technically bought these educational packages. In reality, they were just basic, poorly put together, often straight-up plagiarized PDFs. But here's the catch. When you bought a package, you received free OneCoin tokens as a bonus. Then, you'd recruit your friends, earn a 10% commission on whatever they bought, plus a cut of the sales their friends made. It was basically an explosive growth engine perfectly disguised as financial education.
Section 3. The billion-dollar illusion. Faking the technology.
When you compare the actual mechanics of Bitcoin to OneCoin, the differences are just horrifying. Bitcoin has a strictly fixed supply of 21 million. It runs on a transparent, decentralized public blockchain, and its price is driven by actual market supply and demand. And OneCoin? Well, it had an entirely arbitrary supply that Ruja completely made up. It started at 2.1 billion, and later she just miraculously bumped it to 120 billion. It didn't even have a blockchain. It ran on a centralized SQL database, literally just a glorified spreadsheet. As for the price, it was manually manipulated by Dr. Ruja herself. She would just type in whatever number she wanted to project this illusion of endless growth. And man, did people buy into that illusion. Fueled by aggressive recruitment and these totally fake Forbes magazine covers, which were actually just paid advertisements she ripped out to show off, the scam grew violently fast. By November 2014, their internal exchange was up and running. Fast forward to November 2015, they hit a staggering $1 billion in sales. It all peaked in June 2016 at a massive event at Wembley Stadium, where she inexplicably promised to double everyone's coins and launch a new 120 billion coin blockchain. It broke literally every rule of economics, but the crowd absolutely ate it up.
But you really can't fake it forever. IT expert Bjorn Barriquet hit the nail on the head when he said, completely impossible because there is no coin, it's just transactions, right? In 2016, they were getting so desperate that they offered Bjorn $270,000 to build them a real blockchain. This quote perfectly captures that terrifying moment when he tested their live transaction feed and realized the whole thing was just a fake visual script. Imaginary wallets trading imaginary coins. He quickly walked away from the offer and immediately started sounding the alarm online.
Section 4. Paranoia and betrayal. The walls start to close in.
With tens of millions of dollars flying out globally in commissions, international banks obviously started getting highly suspicious. In fact, a bank in Dubai froze $50 million in assets, which instantly triggered massive panic for Ruja. Her solution? She partnered up with a private banker to set up the Furo Funds. This effectively created a 9-figure money laundering operation routed right through the British Virgin Islands and the Caymans. They funneled $400 million into easily movable assets. We're talking yachts, luxury flats in London, and even Bulgarian tobacco companies.
Behind closed doors, the entire facade was slipping. Take a look at this leaked message from Konstantin Ignatov, Ruja's own brother. He wrote, "As you told me, the network would not work with intelligent people." Ruja had hired him as a personal assistant, basically grooming him to be her fall guy. This text to co-founder Sebastian Greenwood completely exposes the absolute contempt they had for their own investors. They knew exactly what they were doing, and they fully knew they were just exploiting vulnerable people.
But the craziest twist, what ultimately toppled her empire wasn't a financial audit. It was her own private banker and lover, Gilbert Armentor. He was secretly arrested by the FBI for a totally unrelated extortion charge, and he instantly flipped. He became an FBI informant and started recording all of her paranoid, heavily encrypted daily phone calls. FBI agents literally sat right next to him, listening live as Ruja frantically plotted her next moves and discussed her millions, completely unaware she was chatting with the feds.
Which brings us to Section 5, the Vanishing Act. Ruja disappears.
Okay, so here's how the final days played out. In January 2017, Ruja abruptly shut down the internal exchange. She claimed it was just for maintenance, but this effectively stopped any victims from cashing out, and panic really set in. By that spring, Ruja was quietly emptying the company's remaining accounts straight into her private funds. Then, the grand finale. On October 25, 2017, Ruja boarded an early morning flight from Sofia, Bulgaria, to Athens, Greece. She hopped into a car with some Russian-speaking men and vanished. She has literally never been seen again.
The sheer scale of the devastation left behind is heartbreaking. Out of an estimated 3.5 million investors globally. And keep in mind, many of these were people in developing nations who sold their farms, homes, and livestock just to invest. A microscopic 50,000 people at the very top of the pyramid actually made any money. The vast, overwhelming majority, about 3.45 million people, lost absolutely everything. The human cost here is just staggering.
But when it came to justice, well, it wasn't exactly handed out evenly. Her brother Konstantin was completely left holding the bag. Before the FBI even got to him, he was literally tortured by biker gangs who were demanding their missing funds. He was eventually handed a 20-year prison sentence. Co-founder Sebastian Greenwood got the same deal, 20 years behind bars and a whopping $300 million fine. And Dr. Ruja? She completely slipped the net. Her whereabouts are still totally unknown.
Now, before we wrap up, there is one detail that is just mind-blowing. 230,000. Back in 2015, Ruja needed some help unfreezing that bank account in Dubai, right? So she actually traded some of her completely fake OneCoin and company ownership to a Saudi sheikh. In exchange, he gave her 4 USB drives holding 230,000 actual, real Bitcoin. At the time, that was worth maybe $50 million, but today, that stash of Bitcoin would be worth around $20 billion. So ironically, the self-proclaimed Bitcoin killer might actually be sitting on one of the largest Bitcoin fortunes in the world. So as we wrap up this explainer, we are left with one truly haunting question. Did she successfully escape, buy a new face, and is now living a life of unimaginable luxury in Dubai with billions in Bitcoin? Or was she permanently silenced by the mafia, thrown to the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea, just like some of the rumors suggest? Whether she's out there as one of the wealthiest criminals in human history, or she became a victim of her own twisted criminal web, Dr. Ruja Ignatova's story is a chilling reminder of the raw, destructive power of greed. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and remember, always look a little closer at the height.